Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you. Now we can formally start the meeting. Is it on? Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Leader. Good evening, members. Item 1 on the agenda is to confirm the appointment of the Leader of the Council as the Chairman of the Executive for the Council year 2015-16. Is that agreed? Agreed.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Item 2 is to confirm the appointment of the Deputy Leader of the Council as Vice Chairman of the Executive for the Council year 2015-16. Is that agreed? Agreed. Item 3, the minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of March 2015 have been laid on the table for half an hour before this meeting. Are you content that I sign them as a true record? Agreed. I'll do that after the meeting with your agreement. The next item is apologies for absence, but there can't be any because we're all here. Mr. Taylor, number 5, our declarations of interest.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Kevin Denis has declared a pecuniary interest in item 21 and will leave the chamber during the discussion of that item.
Thank you very much. Are there any other declaration, members? No, thank you. Item 6, questions from members of the public. There was one from Mr. Hyman of Farnham.
Thank you again. Council Leader. My question addresses the core principles of the EIA Directive, which are, firstly, that the EIA legislation defines planning consent as being the decision which allows the project to commence, as was confirmed authoritatively by the Grand Chamber in the White City case C50803, Commission versus UK, which at paragraph 100 states, and I quote, "It should be noted that Article 1.2 of that directive defines development consent for the purposes of the directive as the decision of the competent authority or authorities which entitles the developer to proceed with the project." Unquote. And secondly, that the parallel Barker case C29003 at paragraph 48 further established the principle that the implementing decision, and I quote, "cannot extend beyond the parameters set by the principal decision." And thirdly, that the executive precludes the directive, precludes the granting of consent in the absence of a complete and up-to-date environmental statement, which the Barker case also established, and I quote, "must be of a comprehensive nature so as to relate to all of the aspects of the project which have not been assessed or which require a fresh assessment." Unquote. So in view of those principles, does Waverley therefore accept that when determining an application for an implementing consent for an EIA project, and where it's known that the environmental statement's flawed, outdated, incomplete, and or would enable commencement of development on terms that alter the parameters of the original approval, then the application cannot be considered to be immaterial and non-material and cannot be lawfully granted? Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hyman. Well, it's difficult to answer a hypothetical question, but I'm happy to confirm that in undertaking all its duties, the Council will meet any legal requirements imposed upon it. Members, we now move on to some other items on the agenda, but before we do, can I just say a few words about Roger Standing, who's here, I see, and probably going to be dreadfully embarrassed. I'm just about to say this, but Roger's about to retire after 28 years here at Waverley. A very long sentence, and thank him very much for the work that he's done, turning out in the middle of the night to rescue people who were flooded and many such things over a very long period. And certainly on behalf of the Executive, Roger May, I wish you a very happy and long retirement. Colleagues, the Executive Forward Programme, that is set out on pages 11 to 16. Are there any amendments, please? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 8 is the Revenue Outturn 2014-15, the General Fund and Housing Revenue Account. Councillor Ramsdale.
Item 8 is the Revenue Outturn Report. This is the important report reflecting our financial position over the year. The report starting on page 17 sets out the year-end position against the last year's budget. As I said, this to me is the most important report of the year. The key headlines are as follows. Para 5 on page 18 shows that the general fund is showing a net underspend in the year of £485,000. This is good news, and this is close to the figure that has been forecast to members during the year. There are a number of variations from budget that are summarised in Annex 1, page 23, and detailed in the narrative of the report where appropriate. Part of the underspend is the result of budgets that are requested for carry forward into 2015-16, and these are listed in Annex 3, page 27, and a total of £136,000 on the General Fund. As shown at the bottom of Annex 1, it is proposed to fund the land charges settlement payment approved by Council last October from the amounts of the underspend. Turning to the housing revenue account, Para 20 on page 20 explains that the overall outturn position is an overall underspend of £20,000 from a total net budget of £14 million. Most notable in these figures is the high level of spend on responsive and cyclical repairs to our tenants' homes, an area looked at by the subcommittee of corporate ONS, and thanks to them for that. Finally, carry forwards, Annex 3 on page 27 of the housing revenue account of £170,000, which will enable the smoke alarms programme to be implemented in this year. Thank you, Leader. Leader, the recommendations are on page 21.
Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, any comments, please? No? Well, congratulations to the officers, and it's always nice to know that we've got an underspend and some extra money available. And thank you very much indeed. Well done. Item 8, there are 6 recommendations. Are they agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item number 9 is the Capital Programme Outturn 2014-15 General Fund and Housing Revenue Account. Councillor Ramsdale.
The report starting on page 29 sets out the year-end position on capital spending against last year's budget. We need to be asking ourselves, why or if the budget was not achieved. The key headlines are as follows. On the General Fund, the table on page 35, Annex 1, shows total spending of £6.7 million against a budget of £7.8 million, with requests for rescheduling or carry forward to 2015-16 of £964,000. On the housing revenue account, capital spend, the programme of works is split into 3 sections: the core spending on the council homes, building new affordable homes, and reconfiguring or remodelling existing properties to meet current needs. Overall spending of £11 million was achieved against a budget of 18, with rescheduling to 2015-16 requested for a total of £6.7 million. Leader, the recommendations are on page 33.
Thank you very much. These are both very good news. Colleagues, any comments at all? Item number 9, there are 6 recommendations. Are they agreed? Agreed. Item 10 is the affordable housing and infrastructure contribution thresholds. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Leader. The Government has set new thresholds curtailing affordable housing and pooled infrastructure contributions from developers from 10 units or less, and which have maximum combined gross floor area of no more than 1,000 square metres. These new thresholds are below those that are currently adopted in the Waverley Local Plan 2002. This means that Waverley can no longer require new residential development to provide the level of new affordable homes that was previously required by Policy H5. However, the new government policy guideline also allows councils to choose to apply a lower threshold of 5 dwelling units or less for seeking affordable housing contributions and pooled infrastructure contributions in designated rural national parks and areas of outstanding natural beauty. The MPPG goes on to state that in a rural area where the lower threshold is applied, affordable housing and tariff-style contributions should be sought on developments of 6 to 10 units in the form of cash payments, which are commuted until after the completion of the units within the development. The change to policy guidance does not apply to rural exception sites. These are small sites used for affordable housing in perpetuity that would not be normally used for housing. This means that the policy guidance does not also apply to those rural exception sites that require an element of market housing to enable the affordable homes to be provided. As affordable housing is one of the Council's corporate priorities, and given the existing high level of need for affordable homes across the whole of the borough, the need to provide 120 in rural areas, and the limited opportunity for appropriate sites to deliver more than 10 new homes in rural locations, the Executive and in due course the Council is requested to endorse the application of this lower threshold in the AONB. Leader, the recommendation is on page 55.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any comments, please? Item 10. Councillor Reynolds. Sorry, I was just going to...
That's all right. Thanks, Leader. Well, I certainly agree we should agree this way forward. But I think it is a shame that the government is enforcing this new legislation on us, because it doesn't mean it's going to be harder potentially for us to secure more affordable houses, which of course we urgently need in this borough. So that is my shame, but I think at least within the AONB we've got a slight chance of delivering a little bit more than we can under this new policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Item 10, there are 2 recommendations. Are they agreed? Agreed. Item 11 is the Whitley Conservation Area Appraisal. There seem to be several of these. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Leader. This is a particularly comprehensive report, and I commend the officers for the work involved. The Whitley CAA is the 9th of 43 conservation areas in Waverley to be appraised and recommended for approval. The obligation to carry out appraisals is supported by legislation and the latest English heritage guidelines. Within each conservation area, the character of the area is identified and what qualities which should be preserved and enhanced. Boundaries may be reviewed and a management plan produced for enhancement where necessary. In this area, the boundaries have not been reviewed since 1980. The appraisal in Annex 1, page 63, includes a number of boundary extensions and removals due to English heritage guidance and village changes. These are an extension to an area around Enton Mill and to the garden of Whitley Lodge, the removal of the tree nursery, and also removals from the conservation area. That's the tree nursery to the rear of Churchfields and All Saints Church, part of George Eliot Close, and the southwest corner of the conservation area on Church Lane. Each of the changes is explained on pages 58/59. The consultation was carried out during December 14 and January 15, to which 69 responses were received, many on a local pro forma. A petition with 156 signatories was also received. The consultation statement with officer responses is included in Annex 2 on page 105. The consultees' responses were mixed. In respect of the extensions, the majority were in favour. In respect of the removals, the majority were against. But these were mainly related to development potential, which is not relevant. I would draw your attention to the management plan starting on page 63, which covers a number of general and specific areas of potential enhancement, makes 7 recommendations about how these may be progressed, and it also specifically suggests 5 road surface and rights-of-way improvements. There is 1 recommendation, page 62, for the Executive.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Any comment? Thank you. 1 recommendation. Item number 11, is that agreed? Agreed. Item 12 is the Elsted and Weyburn neighbourhood area application. Councillor Adams again. Seems to be a number of these.
Thank you, Leader. My night, obviously. Waverley Borough Council has a duty to support communities wishing to undertake neighbourhood plans, and there are various grants available to the parishes and WBC to assist their implementation. The first step is for Waverley to approve or otherwise a request for a neighbourhood area to be designated. In Waverley, a plan can only be prepared by a town or parish. Elstead Parish Council and Pepper Harrow Parish Meeting have resolved to prepare a plan for the civil parish of Elstead and for Weyburn, which adjoins Elstead's boundary to the east. Elstead have applied to Waverley to agree this neighbourhood planning area. Weyburn mainly lies within the civil parish of Pepper Harrow. Weyburn includes Tanbridge Park and Weyburn Works, a former engineering works now derelict. The area also includes a stretch of the Shackleford Road. Page 126/7 is the map. There is a memorandum of understanding between the two parishes describing the ongoing arrangements, and this is on page 131. In addition, a Weyburn area working group is made up of 75% Pepper Harrow residents. This group will make decisions before the Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group. The Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group will only be corporate when at least one Pepper Harrow member is present. I've had 2 meetings with Elstead and Pepper Harrow, and am satisfied that, in fact, they have reached a resilient and ongoing solution to any cross-boundary problems. Both parishes, individually and then subsequently Waverley, have consulted on the area requested for the request of 6 weeks. Waverley's consultation ended on the 9th of March 2015. Arguments on pages 120 to 122 consider whether the proposed area for the neighbourhood plan is appropriate, and concluded that it is. Although previous neighbourhood plans have been taken to Council for a final decision, new planning guidance states that these applications should now be brought before the Council's executive to decide. The recommendation is further through your pack.
Yes, thank you very much. I have found it. Thank you very much.
1, 2, 2.
Colleagues, this is item number 12, as set out on pages 117 to 134. Any comments? One recommendation on item 12. Is that agreed? 13 is a minor amendment to Milford Conservation Area boundary. I'm sure we have a brief report on this.
Thank you. Milford Conservation Area is one of 9 adopted. The adoption occurred in 1981 and was subsequently reappraised in 2014. Following a review on Waverley's mapping system, an anomaly was identified within the conservation area. The issue originally arose in 1981. It is customary for conservation area boundaries to follow a physical feature such as a road or property boundary. But in the case of Milford, a section of the conservation area boundary dissects the rear gardens of 1 to 15 Ockfields and the surgery on Church Road. In order to rectify this, it is proposed that the Milford Conservation Area boundary is amended to follow the rear boundaries of the above properties in order to remove them from the conservation area entirely. This will have no impact on the wider conservation area or its purpose. A focused consultation took place from the 13th of March to the 24th of April 2015 with little response. There is a recommendation on page 145. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Yes. Colleagues, any comments? There is one recommendation to item 13. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 14 is a policy for dealing with unreasonably persistent and unreasonable complainants. The Council currently has a policy for dealing with unreasonably persistent, vexatious and unreasonable complaints incorporated within its corporate complaints procedure, which is reviewed annually. The report proposes the introduction of a standalone policy for dealing with unreasonably persistent and unreasonable complaints in accordance with the guidance recently published by the local government ombudsman to help local authorities to develop proportionate approach when responding to unreasonable complaint behaviour. On all occasions, we want to handle complaints in the best way possible. Most people are satisfied with the way their complaint has been dealt with, but unfortunately, a very small number are unreasonably persistent, and a policy as how to treat these people is important for all parties concerned so that everybody knows what to expect. Over the last 20 years, only 2 complaints have been declared vexatious or unreasonably persistent. As the report highlights, if any complaint does fall into this category, the statistics will be reported annually in the annual complaints report. Colleagues, any comments, please? Item 14, there was one recommendation. Is that agreed? Agreed. Item 15 is a property matter, an easement of access in Bramley. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Leader. What we have here is there's a development in Bramley near Ricardo Court, which has 24 dwellings, 15 of which are going to be affordable. The access to that is requested to be over Waverley land, which this report details, and of course we shall get not only a fee for that, but also the increase of 11 parking spaces to ease some of the much needed parking issues in the area. So I thoroughly recommend this to the recommendation, and it's on page 154.
Thank you very much. Some more exempt details, member, on page 157, as you will have seen. Any comments, please? Thank you. Item 15, there is one recommendation. Is that agreed? Agreed. 16 is the appointment of the employers' negotiating team for 2015-16 as set out in the agenda. Is that agreed? Agreed. Item 17 is the appointment to the Surrey County Council Local Committee task groups for 2015-16. It is all set out here, but there are a couple of amendments. The Farnham task group, which should be 3 members, it says "and of Town Council." That is inaccurate. It will be Councillor Ramsdale, Councillor Potts and Councillor Storey. And on page 8, the Cranley and Eastern Villages Task Group, Councillor Ellis, I understand, has been appointed by the Parish Council, so can't do it here, so we will appoint Councillor Forozeski, who's a member of the main committee, in his place. Subject to those amendments, there was one recommendation. Is that agreed? Agreed. Appointment to outside bodies. These are made on a 2-yearly basis, and the proposed appointments for 2015-17 are attached on pages 159 to 162. Are they agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 19 are the Executive Director's actions.
Thank you, Leader. 3 items on this category this month. A3 litter picking, £17,000. There's a story behind that, and when we looked at the legislation, despite this being a government responsibility through the Highways Agency, the legislation actually imposes the litter picking responsibility on the Borough Council, and this seems somewhat iniquitous on the part of the council taxpayers in Waverley. And the Leader will be writing to the Secretary of State, asking the Secretary of State to rectify that apparent inconsistency on their assets. The second one is about riverside improvement works, some safety works which were urgently required. And the third category was about urgent repair works at the Museum of Farnham. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, and you're very accurate in what you say about the litter picking. Not only do we have to, it seems, pick up the bill, we can't get the Highways Agency to allow us onto the road to do it. It takes months to get permission to go, and without them doing some form of lane closure, and therefore we were receiving complaints from, I think, Portsmouth to kind of the Greater London boundary about the amount of litter, but mainly because we couldn't go onto the road. But I should be writing to the Secretary of State. Can we note those actions, please? Thank you. I now move that pursuant to Procedure Rule 20 and in accordance with Section 100A, brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the rest of the meeting for the grounds set out in the agenda. Is that agreed?